Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am super excited to welcome another amazing guest to talk about their healing journey. So let me hand over. Do you want to tell everyone who you are and where you are in the world?
Yes, thank you for having me, Jacky. My name is Mia Taffin. I am a trauma-informed coach and an abuse and trauma survivor. I'm also a single mom and I live in Bali, Indonesia.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I love when people have gone through their healing journey and then actually made it their work and made it the thing that they do in the world. So we'll definitely be talking about that. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the moment that you realized something had to change, where you realized something wasn't right, where you kind of sat there and said, like, something has to give now in order to start this journey. Like, take us back to that moment for you.
Yeah, so I was in an 8-year abusive relationship where I was an 8-year abusive relationship with my mentor, who I was training with to become a therapist. And he was much older than me. I was 21 at the time, a little bit lost, didn't really know which direction I was going in. And he believed in me and he gave me a chance. And he said that he wanted me to take over his legacy. And in order to do that, I needed to do a lot of therapy to be able to heal my own trauma so that I could help others. And so I thought, at 21, what an amazing opportunity. I would be stupid not to take it. And so I would meet with him every single day. He would train me and I would tell him about my problems. And because he was in the healing world, I respected him and I thought that he was a therapist, so that was his job. So I was very open with him. And whenever I would say something about my family, my friends, or anything I was struggling with, he would use this information and started to create his own narrative. And he started to tell me things like, when your mum did therapy with me, she said this about you. Your dad said this about you. Your friends did this. And so he started very gradually planting seeds of doubt into my mind so that when I would see these people, if they looked a little funny, I would think, oh, what he said was true. It's true they don't love me. It's true that I'm incapable, that, everything that he said. At the same time, he started to pick apart my identity. So, my dreams. First, it was the people that I loved and who supported me. And then it was my dreams. So since I was 5, I wanted to be a writer. And he told me, your writing is childish. Just everything that meant something to me, he started to break apart. So I started to get very insecure and I started to doubt everything around me and trust him. And trust that he was the only one that could help me through this. Then came a point where I told him I have an issue with sexual trauma from when I was a teenager. And he told me, you don't have a problem. Let me show you. And so the next day I had so much shame. I thought that if what he had said about my friends and family were true, and if they really did, not love me, then if they knew this, then they really wouldn't love me. And so I just wanted to become invisible And it was like, your wish is my command. Let me help you become invisible. And so deleted social media, my phone number, just I cut off from every person in my life. And then throughout these, yeah, it was the shame. The shame is what kept me stuck. And so during these 8 years, I struggled from isolation, where I didn't speak to anyone. If my family wanted to speak to me, they had to call him, his phone number. No one had my phone number. Nobody knew really where I was living or what I was doing. I was working a lot, and I struggled with PTSD. I struggled with memory loss. So I lost my memory from the age of 12 to 21. And postpartum depression when I eventually had my child. He didn't want me to tell anyone that I was pregnant. And so I did my whole pregnancy in secret, and he didn't want anyone from my family to know I had a son until my son would be 10. And so I went through all of this alone, and there came a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I was so alone, and he one day was yelling at me, and he said, your family don't even love you. I don't even love you. And your son is better off without you. And so here's a trigger warning. I attempted suicide. And that was the point where there was this voice in my head that said, they're going to think it was him, and no one will be there for my son. And so I stopped. But I knew in that moment, this is not right. This is not love. Something is seriously wrong. And I reached out to my godparents, and I spoke to them for 3 months, every single day. And during this 3-month period, the abuse was really picking up, and I was having huge panic attacks. He was yelling at me a lot. And then he started to threaten me in the sense of, I will kill myself. And that just kind of kept me feeling so guilty. But my godparents one day said, you have 24 hours to call your family, and if you don't, we will. And so I decided to call them with my phone number, which was the first time in 8 years. And I started with my dad, and I said, I'm so sorry for everything. If I could go back and change things, I would. However, I can't. And so I hope you'll forgive me. And he was, of course, so happy. And then I said, and by the way, I have a 1.5-year-old son. And he was so happy. And then I called my mom. I said the same thing. I called my sister. And then my brother was really the one that I think started my healing journey, because he was my big brother. He was my idol. He was always very strong, very courageous. And when I told him, he burst into tears. And I asked him, why are you crying? And he said, what do you mean? Because I love you. And in that moment, I realized, oh my God, every single thing he said was a lie. And these 8 years was a lie, and they loved me, and they were waiting for me. And I just fell into a panic. And then my mom had to come and pick me up and take me back to Bali, because I was in Australia. And that started my healing journey.
Wow. I mean, firstly, I'm so sorry that somebody who called themselves a therapist treated you in such a way that is horrific and absolutely, like, just what strength you had to go through that and come out the other side and be able to then share and move through and help others. I think that that is such a remarkable thing to be able to do. And yeah, there's so many bits of this that we can dive into. There's so many bits of this that we can dive into, which I think is really incredible. And I guess so once you realized that everything had been a lie and you went home to Bali, or
Yeah, I went home.
was that the going home? Yeah, okay. So you went home to Bali. Like like how did you start to unpick all of that again and like get to know yourself and rebuild all of that trauma? Like,
That's that's a great question. Yeah, it was not easy. I arrived completely broken. I had entered into shutdown phase, which is more than fight, flight, and freeze. This is when your body is actually going into self-preservation, and I couldn't function anymore. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't simple things like putting the rubbish out. I couldn't do it. Um, I was completely numb, and I spoke like a robot. I had been so used to being like a parrot and repeating what he wanted me to say that I didn't even know what I wanted to say. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked, what I disliked. I didn't, and I still had his voice in my head saying, these people don't love you, and so that I think was the biggest thing for me. It was learning to use my voice and realize that the voice inside my head was his and it wasn't mine. And therefore, it was just his perception and it wasn't the truth. And I think this is where so many people struggle because they think that that voice in their head is theirs and therefore it's the truth. But it's just a perception, because if the abuser can have one perception and your parents can have another perception where they love you, they're two completely different perceptions about you. And so there's not one universal truth. And that for me was like a light bulb.
oh, amazing. I love that. I think it's so easy to fall into that trust of the voice in your head because it's the thing that's with you always. It's the thing that you hear over and over and over and over. And it is so interesting when I was going through depression and my healing journey and all of that, realizing that I could rewrite that voice and I could change what that voice said to me. The same thing, it was like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, actually, all the things that have been going around in my head are actually not the truth. They're not something that is even in this reality. Like it's something that I've made up from society, from what other people have said, from, from so many different sources, from magazines, movies, like social media. Like there's so many ways that you can form that thought in your head. And actually, the moment that you realize that you have so much control over that and you have so much power over the things that you think and the things that you allow to become your reality, like everything changes so fast, doesn't it? Like it's literally so incredible. So yeah, I think that that is it's so wonderful to be able to realize that and then start to rewrite the path,
Mhm.
because all the time that you're not able to do that, you're stuck in that reality that has been painted for you. So I think that that is such an amazing kind of step in the right direction of actually just listening to your thoughts and gauging, actually, are they true, are they, are they the truth that you want to believe? Because as you said, there's no single truth to the whole universe. Like everyone can look at a situation in a different way depending on their lens and their perspective and their culture and where they're from, and like there's so many things that can change the way that we look at things. So I think that that is a really interesting perspective for people to think about. And as you were talking, you were saying, you got to the point of potentially trying to take your own life. And then, you got to the point where you came home back to Bali. And once you came home and you started your healing journey, were there hard moments?
Absolutely. Yes. Coming home was very difficult for me because I had a lot of guilt and shame about the fact of what had happened, and that I hadn't been able to pick up on the signs, and at the time I didn't know it was abuse. And so I had a lot of shame for that. I had shame for leaving everyone behind without any notice. And also just having zero understanding of who I was after the abuse. And so I had to really discover who that version of me was. But yes, difficulties. There were so many. There was a lot of fear, um, a lot of there was a yeah, it's a good question because there were a lot of difficulties, but I feel as though when you are willing to take your own life, I think nothing is worse than that. And so I had these two mantras that I kept saying constantly every time things did get difficult, and that was feel the fear and do it anyway. And I have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Those are both so beautiful.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, I think that was really helpful.
Absolutely. I do like that thought of, once you've gotten to that point of wanting to take your own life and decided to live,
Hmm.
like everything changes in that moment.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
really powerful, yeah, it's a really, really powerful thing because it's neither is easy,
No.
realistically. Like neither is easy. Living is not always easy, and taking your own life is definitely not easy. Like both of them are hard for different reasons. And one of the things that always sat with me is that, everything is hard. You just have to choose your hard.
Absolutely.
So whether somebody, like people always say, like, training and going to the gym is hard, but being overweight is hard as well. You've got to choose your hard. Like, and like they've just given you like so many examples of this concept. And I think it's exactly the same. Like we have to choose the hard that we're willing to live with and choose the hard that we're willing to go through. And it is having those mantras and having that process where you can actually pull back and again rewrite those thoughts in your mind rather than going down that negative path, actually just pulling yourself into, okay, well, let me just say these things over and over again until they become the truth that I believe. And then it makes it easier and easier, doesn't it, to go through and do the hard because you actually realize that you can do it and it gets easier and easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my son, he gave me that courage. He It was because of him that I stopped, and it was because of him that I healed. I mean, I had to give him a good life and the life that he deserved. And so I was willing to do whatever it took. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that I was going to get there, um, and figure it out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having another person to live for
Yeah.
is definitely definitely a good motivation to go through the healing journey 100%. So as you were kind of going through this and you started to heal and things started to change, like what was your biggest outlook change on life? Like what was the biggest perspective shift for you as you went through this?
Um, I think it's that um hmm, I think anything is possible if you want it bad enough. Um, what you focus on grows, and so your brain can quite literally become like a greyhound looking for what you want it to look for. You know, it's like when you want to buy a car and you want a specific brand and you never see this car, but then all of a sudden you see it everywhere. Or you want a baby and then all of a sudden you see babies everywhere. The same thing can apply with healing. And so if you choose, and that's the secret, is to you have to choose to want to get better. Even if you don't know how, you have to want it. And if you want it bad enough, you will start to find the things that will help you get there. And I think also all the parts of ourselves that we deem to be wrong or bad were designed at one point just to protect us. And so all the qualities or characteristics that we have that we don't like about ourselves and we are ashamed of actually make us who we are. And I think they were designed just to protect us at one point, but they no longer need to protect us anymore. And when you realize that, then you can find other ways of coping.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, like the nervous system and the brain are just spectacular, aren't they? When you actually start to understand how they work and you start to understand, what you focus on multiplies because of the way that your brain works. It looks for the things that you focus on, and it's such an interesting concept. And I always say, like, so I've got a goddaughter. She's 6 now, and she loves looking for yellow cars. Like, it's her favorite thing to do. And whenever we drive anywhere, she'll always say, "We're going to look for yellow cars." And I'll always think to myself, like, there's hardly any yellow cars on the road. Like, I never see yellow cars. And then we'll be driving and we'll see like 10 yellow cars between her house and my house. And it's always just so wild because it just reminds me of like how much actually when you pull something into focus, you see it everywhere. And I love that concept of like it's the same with your healing journey. Like if you pull the things that will heal you into focus and focus on the things that you need more of in your life, the likelihood is that you will find them. But if you constantly focus on the things that are causing you issue or are making things worse, then you will just keep finding more of that. And there's something really like amazing in that, which I absolutely love. So, okay, you said that right at the beginning, one of the first things you said is that you are now a trauma-informed coach yourself, and you obviously like help people in this space. So how did you go from like healing journey to the work that you're doing now? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I saw a trauma-informed coach who helped me, and I was blown away by the approach. She was also a compassion-focused coach, and so she taught me the power of compassion, self-compassion. And I was honestly thinking it would take 5 years of intensive therapy to recover, but it only took 10 sessions. And although I wasn't completely recovered, I was well on my way. And I was just, yeah, blown away by her approach that I decided to train with her. And I love the fact that it's trauma informed because I think that is just so important, being, aware of how trauma shows up in the body, looking at nonverbal cues of trauma survivors, because there's a lot that goes on beneath the surface. And I think it's very important. Even the language we use is important. And so, yeah, so I did the training, and now I'm in the process of setting up my coaching business. So it's only been a year and a half since I've been back. And so I'm in the process, of setting up my business and just sharing my story. My goal is really to help survivors feel like they're less alone, to give voice to the things that they can't voice themselves. Because once upon a time, I was that person who didn't have a voice, who felt alone, who felt isolated. And I just hope that if I can help a few people along the way, then I think that's very special.
Oh, 100%. You absolutely are. You absolutely are sharing your story and using your voice. Like you are definitely shining a light in the world. And as I said, we're so grateful that you're here and sharing it with us. So, it's incredible. And um so okay, let's go to kind of practicalities then, because I think that it's always good. I love to give people real practical ways of, starting the journey, going through healing. So for you, what would your advice be for somebody who's coming out of maybe an abusive relationship, or coming, back into a space where they have like been away, they feel that guilt and that shame? Like, what would your advice be for somebody going through all of that? How do they start?
Um, so I think number one, shame grows in secrecy. And so if they do have a lot of shame, just finding one person that you feel comfortable with. That can be a friend, a family member, a therapist, just bringing it to light. Because when I arrived back and I saw my therapist, I was expecting that once I brought all of this up, she would look at me and with judgment, rejection, and that's what they're expecting. But when you're met with kindness, acceptance, and compassion, all of this shame disappears and you realize, actually, I'm just a human. And so being able to find one person you can trust and to be honest and open with it. The second thing would be when it comes to the voice in your head, I would, it's very common to hear affirmations. And I think affirmations are very powerful, but if you're a trauma survivor and you feel as though you are incapable of doing anything, and then you tell yourself, I am capable, or I am confident, and you don't feel confident, you're not going to believe it. Therefore, you're not going to take action in accordance to that. So one way to help you is to break it down and make it realistic and say, I am in the process of learning how to be confident. I'm in the process of learning how to be capable. I'm in the process of learning how to feel safe in my body, how to trust others, how to, set boundaries, whatever it is. I'm in the process of learning, because that is safe for your nervous system. It is realistic, and your brain can say, oh yeah, we can work with this, and so that feels comfortable. And once you get to a place where you feel comfortable saying that consistently, then you can say, I am confident, I am capable, I am trustworthy, da, da, da.
Yeah, I absolutely love the affirmations. Like, people sometimes try stretch too far with affirmations. They try jump too quickly to that end goal that they want. And it's exactly that. Your nervous system will just disagree with you. You will actually do more damage than good if you are constantly trying to push like too far into that space. So I think that thing of like, I am learning, I am like doing, I am, whatever words you want to use, but it's such a great way to start that process of shifting what you believe, rather than just diving straight in and saying, I'm super confident and love being seen by the world, and then it's actually, everything in you feels jarred and like,
Yes.
fighting you to be like, no, it's not the truth. So yeah, I think because a lot of people don't realize, but affirmations, like the affirmation is, it's less about the words and more about how it makes you feel. So if
Absolutely.
the affirmation doesn't make you feel good, it is actually pretty pointless saying it because you're doing the wrong thing in that process of using the affirmation. So you've got to go through that process and really sit down and like feel how that feels when you say it, feel how it sits when you say it. And actually, if it feels good and you're sitting and you're thinking, like, yes, this feels really great. Like, and I also find like affirmations can change over days, weeks, months, your cycle, like depending on what's happening, how busy you are. Like it's not just a case of writing one set of affirmations and then being like, these are my affirmations and like I'm done. It's a very kind of fluid thing, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think also like it's important to become curious. So becoming curious about not why has this happened to me, why is it happening for me? You know, these little shifts, or I can't do this yet. You know, all these little, the power of words. I think when you start to recognize how you're, first you need to become aware. So when you become aware of what you're actually telling yourself, what you actually believe, and then after that, you become curious. Like, okay, how am I going
Mm.
to shift this? And find healthier ways and more supportive ways of changing this belief.
Yeah. Yet is my favorite affirmation. Literally, I use it with my clients all of the time. Clients like, so I help people start their online businesses, and clients will literally say to me, like, oh, I'm absolutely rubbish at tech. I can't figure this out. And I'll be like, yet.
Yeah.
Just put yet on the end because we're learning. Like, just put yet on the end and like stop telling yourself such a horrible story. Like, you're definitely going to be able to do this at some point. So you just have to believe. And like, we start by just saying, I haven't figured this out yet, but I'm learning. Like, it's such a powerful shift in that belief that everything is possible for you, that belief that you can always figure it out. Like, there's always a way. I read Marie Forleo's book,
Hmm.
Everything is Figure Outable, like as one of like the first books on my healing journey. And it shifted so much for me in that thought process of like, yeah, I'm actually a really smart person. Like I can figure out pretty much anything if I actually put my mind to it. And it was like such a shift in going from feeling like this helpless victim of like, oh, like life is just happening to me and around me and I have no say over what's happening, to really just being like, actually, if I sit down and think about this, like I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. And like I'm highly dyslexic. So the process of like puzzles are really easy for me. And I see like puzzles and stuff like that. And my brain's like, oh yeah, I can figure that out. When it comes to writing and reading, obviously not as easy. But the stories that I told myself for so long that like I couldn't study, I would never be academic. Like there were so many things I told myself. And once I kind of shifted that thought process, like I was like, oh, actually, I could probably figure out a way to do any of the stuff if I wanted to. And I actually went on to do my master's just to kind of like prove the point. And like it's so amazing, isn't it, when you actually shift that thought process and you start to tell yourself a different story. It just unlocks so much in front of you because you're suddenly like, oh yeah, actually, I could do that. I could figure that out. I could come up with a way. Like it's such a different way of looking at things if you can just start shifting that, like, I can learn, I can figure out, I haven't got it yet, but I'm getting better. Like, there's so many ways that you can frame this to help move from that place of like incapacity, like not being able to do anything, to actually feeling quite in control and quite empowered in your life. So, I absolutely love that. Like that is such a yeah, it's such a good thing, not just like do an affirmation, but actually like really do an affirmation, do it properly. Like it's a really, really powerful thing. Okay, so final question. And literally every time I talk to guests, I feel like we could talk for years, but we do have to wrap up at some point. So, final question. I always love to ask guests what your next level of healing is. So, you said that you're going to be starting your business soon. Obviously, you've only been home for a relatively short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. But what does the next level of healing look like for you on your journey?
Yeah. For healing, I think my relationship with my son. So this year and a half has really been about bringing me back to life, healing, studying, and setting up my business. And although I have been there for my son, I think the mum guilt is something I need to work on. And so I think that's my next healing journey.
Oh, I love that. And you've already started just by saying it out loud.
Yeah. I mean, the business has already started. It's just fresh.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I wish you all of the best for the business, for your beautiful life, for your wonderful son. It has been such an honor to have you on the podcast. Obviously, we're going to share details to your Instagram and your business below. So if people want to reach out and they want to come and work with you, they will have the ability to do that, which is absolutely incredible as well. But I just want to say, yeah, massive thank you for coming, sharing your voice, sharing your story, and giving people such great practical ways of starting to move through their own healing journey. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of the Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Diary of Discovery.